Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Jamf and their Jamf Now software that helps you manage your Apple devices from anywhere. Get started by setting up your first 3 devices free at jamf.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I have a double header here today, or at least double guests, but one particular topic. First up, the guests. For the first time in way too long a time, Mr. David Sparks. David, welcome. It's good to see you.
Hi, Chuck. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I usually hear you on Mac Power Users, but I don't get to see you, so thanks for coming back.
Yeah, I know. Macworld shut down. We don't get to see each other as much. It sucks.
I know, but you're busy building all kind of empires, so what are you going to do?
In theory.
Yeah.
In theory, brother.
And the other one who is back, he's been here a little more recently, but never enough, Mr. Bret Terpstra. Bret, welcome.
Thank you, Chuck. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you with your AirPods and all. That's very cool.
Not my great big cans on my head. Yeah.
I feel like I'm like the old guy. I got these big headphones on. I'm not as classy.
Yours are way sleeker than mine usually are. They look like this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
But look like a panda bear alien.
But there's a lot of isolation going on in those, Brett, so, So the reason you're here is that you both have together a new book, 60 Mac Tips Volume 2. Now, I think we talked to one or both of you back when Volume 1 came out, and that's been, I don't know. You tell me, how long ago has it been?
5 years.
5 years ago. Wow. Yeah. So now we have Volume 2, and I'm really anxious to find out about this, but why after 5 years did this happen? Is it the new OSs, or was it just time, or did you both just have time finally to get it updated? What's going on?
Yes.
The last one was for Mountain Lion. And I mean, when it first came out, it was when Mountain Lion was out, and most of the tips continued to work. A lot of them changed, but over, what's it been, 3 or 4 operating systems since then, there's a lot of new stuff and a lot of new tips and things that especially people who just started now would miss if they only had Volume 1. So.
Okay, so I'm glad you put it that way, because this is not just Volume 2 updating Volume 1. And no. It's also, I assume that there's some overlap. Is that fair to say, or are these 60 brand new tips?
Yeah, what we did was we updated Volume 1 with the tips that broke. We replaced them with new ones, or if there were tips that just needed updating. For instance, there's a cool trick about how to quickly print a PDF with a keyboard shortcut, and Apple's changed the command in the meantime. So we re-recorded that one and got the new command in there. Then there's a couple that just broke, and we replaced them with new ones. But we've updated Volume 1, so everything is good again. But then when we were doing it, we're like, you know what? There's 60 more. Let's do a Volume 2. And that was always kind of the plan. But getting time for us both, finding time when both Bret and I could get it done, because it actually takes quite a bit of time to put together 60 videos, was the hard part. And we finally just both decided. We met at when we got to hang out together a bit at Command D, the automation conference. And that's basically where we made the blood pact. We're going to get this thing done.
Blood pact. Okay, so you were serious about accomplishing this.
Yeah.
We have to be. We can talk a lot, but yeah, it requires blood pact to finish something.
And then we took turns like pestering each other. Bret would pester me for a while. Then I'd get on it and I'd pester him, and it would just kind of go back and forth. But we eventually got it done together.
Well, Command D was not that long ago, so it must have been a pretty active pestering activity to actually get it done.
Yeah, we had actually started work on it beforehand. And we started work on this like 3 or 4 years ago, actually. And we had like a running shared spreadsheet, and we were working on it. But Command D is where we both said, okay, we're going to start hitting deadlines and recording and getting things going.
Well, now, the first one, and this, before we get into some of the tips, I wanted to get this out, that the first one, as I recall, was an iBooks book.
The first one was both iBooks and a PDF version, because some folks don't have iBooks, depending on what country they had. So with the first one, if you bought the PDF, you got a folder with all the video files in it. So you basically got all the videos like separate from the iBook. And most people want the iBook version because, I mean, it's easy. It updates easily. Everything's self-contained. You can get on an airplane and just watch them. But in the years that have intervened, I have discovered, because I sell, different books, that a lot of people are consuming these things on iPads and they want a streaming solution. And people don't want to necessarily download 2 gigabytes of media. So that's how we kind of came across the idea that we're going to do a streaming version too.
Which I thought was intriguing when I first saw it. It's like, okay, I'm not quite sure about this. What exactly am I buying and how am I buying it, and how easy is it to go back and, to your point, get it updated or referenced? And so you chose Vimeo as your distribution method for streaming.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a while with some of my my video field guides, and I really like it. It's Vimeo is a good platform. They can distribute 1080 video content, which we can't do in the iBooks because of the file sizes. With Vimeo, you have the option of selecting that a customer can either stream it or download it. So I wanted people to still be able to download onto their drive if they just want to own the video. And then the other nice thing is it's easier to update, because with the PDF distribution, if I made a change to one screencast, you would have to download the entire, multi-gigabyte sets of files. Whereas now I can update a single video on Vimeo and then it'll just go out. And like, for instance, I do the OmniFocus video field guide that way. And I'm working on a video right now on all the iOS 11 improvements. So I'll just post that to the Vimeo so people who bought it can just get that, and they don't have to re-download an entire book. So that was kind of the idea behind it. And an iBooks kind of gives you the same thing, because if you buy an iBooks, you get an update, you press the update button, and you're updated. So with both platforms, we were looking for a way to make it easy for people to have the ownership of the content if they wanted it, and also get easy updates.
Yeah, and as someone who also publishes on Vimeo, though not books and not pay for, one of the features I love about Vimeo that something like YouTube does not have is that ability to replace a video. So there's something up, as you said, something updates, or in my case, something is out of date. I can go back, I can replace that particular video, not lose the download link, not lose any of the metadata. It just changes so that the viewer sees it. And that's a really, really nice feature.
Yeah.
So, Brett, how about if I turn to you and say, what kind of tips are we talking about here? Are we across the board? Is this primarily OS tips, or do you delve into some of the applications that come with, I guess at this point, with High Sierra?
So all of Apple's default applications, the ones that everyone gets as part of the bundle, they're pretty covered in depth. In the first volume, we did a little more with third-party apps. In this one, ultimately, we only had one third-party app tip, but they do run the full gamut from this is what you should know to start editing text on your Mac, keyboard shortcuts that everyone should learn, all the way through terminal tips for hacking your dock and visual demonstrations of how that works. And so I mean, it's a full range. It's designed for people who are curious. I would say it doesn't matter if you think you're a novice or a power user. If you're curious, then you're probably a power user that just hasn't developed the skills yet. And this book will get you there. And for power users, there's a bunch in there that everyone will be like, oh, I had no idea.
60 tips seems like a lot. And it also seems like not a lot if you're trying to cover all the, as you said, Brett, the default apps that Apple gives you with High Sierra. And so, how did you all mix it up? And of course, there's the inevitable question of how did you choose what to include versus what not to include? Because between the two of you, I know you had more than 60 tips.
So these are tips. They're not tutorials on how to use all of these apps. It's somewhat assumed that if you're into buying a book like this, you already are using most of the apps to begin with. So these are things you might not have known about things you're already using. And so basically the criteria for a tip is anything that made us go, wow, or we remember when we first figured it out going, oh, that's cool. So.
Yeah, another thing we did, we cheated a little bit. Like I had originally a series of tips on making better secure browsing in Safari. How can you use Safari in a way that you're not exposing yourself as much as you could. And then as I realized, that's 4 or 5 tips, but they were all very short. We combined that like into one, like better secure Safari browsing. So we did cheat a little bit when it made sense, but we really tried to keep the videos down to 1 or 2 minutes, although some of them got a little longer than that. And we tried to keep it like a length where you could sit down and just in a couple minutes learn something cool.
It's like a good rock album. Like most of the songs fit the 3-minute mark. And then there's always the 1 or 2 kind of operatic, expansive ones. So, yeah.
The extended cuts.
I see. Okay. Well,
like we had one, like one of the ones, this was a selfish one for me. I just wanted Bret Terpstra to go through Activity Monitor for me. I literally wanted this someday when I was sitting next to him because he's such an awesome nerd. I knew that he knew things about Activity Monitor that I didn't know. So he did one where he did a walkthrough in Activity Monitor. That's not as much of a tip as just learning Activity Monitor. So like that one came out longer than
I think the fact that Activity Monitor is there is a tip for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
Hidden in your utilities folder. Yeah.
Well, and I'll be anxious to watch that one because every time somebody gives me a little tip on Activity Monitor, I inevitably open it up, look at all these things and say, okay, I know what these 3 or 4 do, but I'm not sure about this other and why it's relevant. And then I never get back to it. So
that's the thing, is it's a bunch of numbers, and sometimes it looks like an app is misbehaving when it's actually using memory properly the way any app should. And yeah, there's a lot to understand there.
Yeah. I should ask, since we are saying that these are videos, if I sat down and wanted to watch it end to end, how long does it take me?
I don't have an exact count. We were keeping a rough tab as we were preparing. I think it's slightly north of 2 hours for volume 2. Actually, they're both right in the ballpark of 2 hours. So if you got all 120 tips, it'd take 4 hours to get through them all. Okay,
so that's not unreasonable. That's just come back from lunch and watch it, and by 2:30 or so, you're an expert, or 3, I guess.
Although I honestly would recommend not doing it that way. If you wanted to, I think what I would do is I would pick a couple, watch the tips, and then just use them for a while and just kind of get them under your fingers. I think trying to consume 60 tips and incorporate them is going to be really hard because some of these are really game changing. So I always feel like pick a few and get those under your fingers, then pick a few more and work your way through slowly. I think would be a better way to get through it.
Yeah, I think that's very wise.
I agree.
Yeah, no matter where you are, you try to ingest too many tips, and you inevitably forget them in a couple hours. Just make a list, start down the list. In this case, you've given us a list of 60, so that'll keep us going for a while. Use them.
Yeah. That's how I always tell people to learn keyboard shortcuts, because people watch me and I hardly ever go up to an app's menu, and they're like, how do you know all these? And basically, anytime I do have to go to the menu, in any application, it'll show you to the right of the option. If there's a keyboard shortcut, it'll show you what it is. So I went to the menu. I had to do this. That's the one that I work on for a day just to memorize it. And then it becomes, muscle memory. But I don't try to, for myself or teaching other people, to teach them more than 2 or 3 at one time, because you gotta use it.
And I think in Volume 1, we actually added a video tip on how to create custom keyboard shortcuts when they don't have an option. Like you can make them for apps. So we taught that in Volume 1, I believe.
And Brett, I love your approach. Don't try to learn them all. Learn the ones that you need or that you use, because there's otherwise you are almost guaranteed to fail. So pick the one, and if you realize that you're going to that particular menu item 3 and 4 times, okay, now it's time to think about learning it. But don't look there and say, oh, all these others look interesting. It's just never going to work. Never going to work.
Definitely.
David, you just mentioned Volume 1. So is Volume 1 still available, and do you feel it's still relevant for the most part?
Yeah, I do. And we actually moved, because I talked earlier how Volume 1 was sold on iBooks and PDF format. One of the things we did when we did the update was we moved it out of PDF, and now Volume 1 is also available on Vimeo. So if you want to get the streaming version, you can do that. If you bought Volume 1 on your iBook application, an update should have showed up by now. So if you just go on iBooks and click the updates button, we're hearing from lots of people who bought the first one years ago and are really enjoying the updated content.
This week's MacVoices is brought to you by Jamf Now. Jamf Now lets you manage your Apple devices from anywhere. When you first start your business, it's pretty easy to keep track of your own computer and phone. But as you grow and start to buy more tech for your employees, it gets harder and harder to keep track of everyone's Macs, iPhones, and iPads. Figuring out how to secure the iPad your sales rep lost can be tough, especially when you're in different locations. Jamf Now makes that, and a whole lot more, much easier. You can configure settings, protect sensitive information, even lock or wipe a device from anywhere. Jamf Now secures your stuff, so you can focus on your business instead. No IT expertise needed. MacVoices viewers and listeners can start securing their businesses and their devices today by setting up the first 3 devices free. Yes, that's 3 iPhones, iPads, or Macs on Jamf Now for free. And for just $2 a month per device, you can add more iPhones, iPads, or Macs. Create your free account now, today, at jamf.com/MacVoices. That's jamf.com/MacVoices. Thanks, and welcome back to Jamf Now as a sponsor of MacVoices. So, share with us, I obviously don't want you to give away too much, but you mentioned the activity monitor. Brett, what was one of the tips that you put together, or that David put together, that you found particularly useful or interesting and made you go, wow?
That's a fair question. I have been on vacation for a week now, taking a break from making screencasts. I had written down my favorites. Here. Favorite tips. I have notes. I had spent, I don't remember, it was when Siri was first available, I had spent a long time trying to figure out how to be able to say, hey, SIRI. I don't want to trigger anyone's Siri right now, but I wanted to be able to do that at my computer, not just on my phone, to trigger her with voice instead of having to hit the keyboard shortcut and then talk to her. One of David's tips made me realize that I don't know if it changed, but when I was first trying to do it, I was going through these crazy using dictation commands with Apple scripts to try to trigger her. There's an easy way to do it, and that's in the book. I love that one.
Okay.
And then David also walked through the optimizing storage features that are now available in High Sierra, which are fantastic. If he hadn't done that tip, actually, I did record that tip prior to realizing that he had already uploaded it. So I lost an hour there. But yeah, it's great information, and he did a great job with that one. I have one more. You want to hear? Do I get 3?
Sure, as many as you want. Sure.
The proxy icon. I was brainstorming with David because I had run out of ideas, because I'm not the guy normally who uses all the default apps, things like Apple Notes and Apple Mail. I always find nerdier things to do. So I had to brainstorm with David a little bit to figure out what exactly normal people would want to know about. In some of our conversations, I realized that the proxy icon, which is the little tiny document icon up next to the name of the document and the title bar of every document, a lot of people don't realize how much power is in that. And that, in combination with the little drop-down menu you get when you actually click the title, where you can change the name of the document and add tags and everything. There's also tagging tips that I think are great. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that a lot of people who use their computers every day and do a really good job with the operating system don't realize that there are things you can do with that icon.
I'm embarrassed to say I know there are a number of things you can do with it. I never knew it was called the proxy icon. It was just sort of there. So I just learned something.
It acts as a proxy for the document. So you can use that icon to do anything you would normally do with like the icon in Finder. Drag it around, move it.
Yeah, like one of the cool things is if you've got a document open and you want to email it to someone, you can just drag the icon out of the proxy icon across to an email, and it drops the document in the email.
Oh, didn't know that. Okay.
Or you can drag a text document straight down to marked in your icon bar or in your doc.
Yeah.
And preview your markdown document.
David, how about you? A few of the favorite tips.
Well, my favorites are, Brett and I both learn from each other whenever we do this stuff. So my favorites are a bunch that he made. He did a series of 3 on tagging that I feel like are kind of a little mini masterclass that go through, because tagging is an interesting development on the Mac. We wanted it forever. Apple's finally added it in a way that makes sense. And now it's also dragged with iOS 11. It goes over to the iPad and iPhone as well. So I think there's been more of a reason than ever to use tags, but nobody's really been working on it like Brett has. I know Brett uses them in his day-to-day file operation. So seeing someone who does it every day kind of walk through how you use tags, how to create them, how to index them, and rely upon them, that was some of my favorite screencasts in the book. Also his dock tips too. I thought I knew everything about the dock, and then Brett kind of, blew my mind. He had some cool terminal stuff, and now my dock is completely subject to my whim, thanks to Brett.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. The tagging thing, I think, Brett, I know you and I've talked about that before. That seems to be for some people. I know you've been a big evangelist for it, and definitely you've taught me a few things. I don't employ it anywhere near to the degree you do. But yeah, it can definitely be useful. But now David really has me curious about the dock, because I use the dock all the time.
I would say that I have become a cautious evangelist for tags. Having tried to help enough people implement them, I've also learned that some people just won't, that tags won't work for them. So I'm an evangelist. I'm a fan, but a cautious one.
I think that shows a lot of maturity about the fact that you that you recognize that this just is not for some people. And it seems like that's a drum we all beat a lot, is that not all these tips are for everyone. Find the ones that work the way that you do, and the ones that will really benefit you, and then don't make changes just for the sake of making changes.
Oh, I'm an efficiency fan, which means I look for the fastest ways to do things. But if adopting the fastest way to do something slows you down too much, and you just can't get back, then don't adopt new things.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think knowing about what's available is important. Because one of the things I do with tagging, because I don't use as much as Brett does, but I'm a big fan of Hazel. And there's all these different things Hazel can do, one of which is it can look at tags as conditions to auto sort and name and file your documents. And I have, after watching Brett's videos, I have found ways to automate tag creation as part of my Hazel workflows, which doesn't take me any time. And now it's giving me some additional options. And so I do think if you were interested in tags, but it never really worked for you, especially back in the battle days when adding a tag was literally going into the inspector and doing, mumbo
a spotlight
jumbo
comment.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot better now. So maybe this is something worth at least considering. So, watch 12 or 14 minutes worth of videos Brett's done on them. And then you're going to have a good idea whether or not it works for you.
I know you both, and I know you both really well through your work. And I know that both of you really tend to dig deep into a topic. I mean, whenever you go for it, you go deep. And that's why I'm anxious to see just how well that philosophy sort of translates into this second volume of 60 tips. Because Dave, I've read a number of your books, and I know how, you go into places I can't follow because you just dig down so deep. And Brett, you and I've had plenty of discussions about different aspects of the Mac. And so how do you balance that tendency? And it's a positive tendency, but how do you balance that tendency for both of you, and then turn it around into 60-second to 2-minute videos?
We go absolutely as deep as you can go in 2 minutes.
Okay, so 2 minutes worth of air and then back up, right?
Well, it really depends. We did a series of videos in this one about Siri on the Mac, which, I thought was kind of silly when I first heard they were putting it in. And then the process of creating the videos and really learning the inside out of it, there's a lot of things you can do faster with Siri on the Mac, but you got to figure out how to talk to Siri. That's stuff that anybody could get good at, The dock is another one. Brett did 2 videos on the dock. The first one could take someone who's never used a Mac before and give them a bunch of power over their dock. And then the second one would take somebody that says, okay, I know that stuff, but I want to go farther. And then he opens a terminal and starts showing you terminal commands to really just do whatever you want to your talk. And so we really tried to build the book in a way that there'll be something there for everyone.
Well, I know a few weeks ago, and I've told this story a couple times, I had a tipping point with Siri on my iOS device because I suddenly realized that this is the easiest way to put a reminder to myself on any of my devices. It's just to invoke Siri, and I won't do it to anyone, and say, remind me to talk to Brett and David on Sunday at 4 p.m. And, that's it. But otherwise, I have to open up something, type it in, decide when I want it. And that's when, okay, now the tech is working for me. I'm not working for the tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finding photos and music and all the Spotlight stuff that you can access through Siri, and then searches that you do with Siri, you can save to your Today view as live updating searches. And there's some power there that isn't just cosmetic. Like, it's not just another way it's a faster way to do a lot of things.
But like a good example on the Mac is I work at my iMac hours a day, and I like to have music in the background. And I've got all these great playlists in Apple Music, but in order for me to open iTunes, navigate to the playlist view, find the appropriate playlist, it's just a bunch of mouse clicks and nonsense. Whereas using Siri on the Mac, and we show this in one of the videos, you can activate music with a sentence, and it's just faster. I don't know how else, it's just faster and less intrusive. And if you're working, like you're in the flow of work and suddenly say, well, I want to listen to Miles Davis, you don't have to leave your Microsoft Word document. You can just activate Siri and change to the Miles Davis playlist. And I think it sounds goofy, but it really does change the way you work.
No, I don't think it sounds goofy at all. I think that that's one of the realizations that a lot of us are having to come to. And some of us get to it easy. Some of us have to be drug kicking and screaming only because we have the way that we've been doing it for so long. It works for us. In fact, we've gotten so fast and so efficient at that old way that we think that is the best. And David, to your point, just you need to know that these other things are out there. You might have to take a step back to take 3 steps forward, but eventually you're going to take those 3 steps forward. And to me, that's what this book is about. So.
Yeah.
So pricing, obviously, pricing and where do we go to get it?
Sure. The book's $20, and you can get it in the iBook store, or you can go to Vimeo. I'll give Chuck links. And both books are same price. They're both in the same locations.
Great. Okay. I want to make sure I give you both chances to plug social medias or any other projects, because this is not the only thing. And based on the last book, it'll be another 5 years before we talk in this format again. So, David, how about you?
You can find me at macsparky.com. And then the 2 podcasts I do, one is the Mac Power Users, which is at macpowerusers.com. And I do the Free Agents, which is kind of an independent worker podcast on Relay FM. And
we can find you on Twitter as?
Twitter, I'm Mac Sparky. Any social media stuff, I'm Mac Sparky.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here. It's good to have you.
My pleasure, Chuck.
Brett, how about you?
I am, my central hub would be bretterpstra.com, TTScoff, and any social media in the world. If I'm there, I'm TTScoff. And I have Systematic, my podcast on esn.fm. That is it's an interview show. We just started doing some, like the most popular part of that show is always the end, top 3 picks, where the guest gets to list 3 things from any category that are cool to them, and then conversation ensues. So I'm doing some episodes every month now that are just top 3 picks. So they will still hit everyone in the wallet when they want to go buy those things. But definitely worth checking out. And also Overtired with Christina Warren is also back on ESN now. Slightly irregular schedule, but those episodes are always a blast to do. So I would check out Overtired as well. And other than that, you can always find Mark II on the Mac App Store and buy it and, support my ability to pay rent. So, yeah.
Because that's important. That's important.
Rent is important, yes.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to enlighten us a little bit and tease us with some of the tips. I'm looking forward to in enhancing my knowledge of the Mac, even though I think I know a reasonable amount about it. It sounds like you two have discovered even more. So they're going another 2 hours, but I know it'll be good in the end.
But we're all geeks. It's fun learning this stuff.
It absolutely is.
I mean, that's a bottom line.
What we do.
It's kind of fun, figuring out a better way to do this.
Yeah. Better mousetrap, right?
Yeah.
So, folks, it's 60 Mac Tips Volume 2 from David Sparks and Bret Terpstra. I will have links in the show notes so you can go right to them on the iBook store or at their website. Go check it out. It's going to be 2 hours that greatly improves your life. Knowing these two, absolutely, I can say that unconditionally. Until
Chuck, can I mention? I forgot to mention. We have a website for this book, 60tips.com. Yeah, if you go to 60tips.com, that's probably a pretty good place to get yourself there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, yes. They were too busy writing tips, folks. They forgot the website.
And not so good at the marketing sometimes.
Yeah, well, the work speaks for itself.
I mean, I built a website. I just forget to tell anyone about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to see if someone would just randomly find it.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, go to the show notes, folks. You won't have to randomly look for it. We'll take you right to it. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.